Hi, Tom Andreas here. Hey, I want to show you something really cool that you can do with your CNC Shark or any CNC machine. I've got this cutting board, and we did made it kind of like a drain board. And so, like a lot of times, if you have a ham or a chicken or a turkey or something like that, and you go to cut it, then the fluids run all over. And so, if you're using this in a party, like a cutting board in a party to carve on, a lot of times you'll have, if you use this surface, you'll have the fluids and things run off, and then it's just not very presentable. And so what we've done is to create a drain tray into it, and we've used the fluting tool in VCarve Pro to cut a tapered flute so that it drains into this reservoir. And so these are flutes, and each of those flutes had to be measured and put precisely between the laminations. And so when we go to the software in just a moment, you'll see that I had to measure using a micrometer the distance for these lines so that they would be precisely between the laminations. This is called a pocket, and so then I'm going to show you how we're going to do the pocket carving using the VCarve Pro. So once again, we're going to use the fluting tool and the pocket tool. Okay, so here we are in VCarve Pro, and what I have done is I've set a lot of guidelines here. And so what I've done is to first of all enter the size of my cutting board, and I took the actual measurements of my cutting board, and it's 18.5 wide, 11.5 tall, and it's 1 inch thick. And I want to go ahead and zero it out in the center of the board, which is why I have the crosshairs right here. So I'll just click OK. And then I simply created a margin, which is this outer line. And remember, to do that, you simply click in the ruler bar and pull out a margin and drop it wherever you want it. And so I'll just put it back up on the ruler bar to get rid of it. And so I've put all these in here, and I'm going to have my reservoir here on the left side, and then I need the flutes down here in this area. Now, each of these flutes has been very precisely measured already, and I'm going to just use the line tool then to go ahead and put the flutes where they belong. Now, so I'm going to create a line, and I'm going to drag it over to the center of the reservoir and drop it. And you can't see it, but it is there over top of that construction line. So I'll hit escape and drop that line there and pick it up again and put the second flute over here and escape. And I'll continue that process. It's very important that when you use the fluting tool that you understand that where you start the line is where you start the flute. And so that's where the machine sees the beginning, and click, and that is where the machine sees the end of the line. So that's the beginning and that's the end. That's important in just a moment. So let me go ahead and finish this. Okay, so now I have the flutes that I need. Okay, so I have to select each of these individual lines, and the lines are the center location of the flute. And so I need to pick up this tool, which is the selection tool, and I'll simply click, and then I'll hold down the shift key to add the rest of these flutes. And so what we will do then is to use this tool, which is to create a fluting toolpath. Now, in this particular case, we're going to start at 0, and we want that flute to taper downhill like a gutter. And we want to go to a flute depth of 0.4 inches. I've got a ball nose, 1/2 inch in diameter tool selected. I have the ramp selected. And there are a lot of different options here. And so the ramp type is linear, and I'm going to go ahead and calculate that so that you can see it. Okay, so at this point, what I'll do is preview the toolpath, and so you can see now how I can cut that cool looking drain into the board. So from there, I would simply need to save that into the CNC Shark so that I can cut it. And so, but at this point, I just want to show you how to actually operate the flute tool. So I'm going to close that. And let's go back over here. And so now at this point, I have that where I could cut it. And so now the next thing that I will do is I will use the rectangle tool, and I'm going to use a radius of 0.75 to round that off. And so I will go ahead and make this area. I'm not quite sure why it does that, but anyway, I have to re-enter that 0.75 and click apply. And so now we have the area which is going to be our reservoir. And so at this point it's already selected, and the only other thing then that I would need to do is to select the pocket toolpath. And so in this particular case, I will go ahead and select for the ball nose, which I had to enter. That did not come with the default, but this is actually a very usable bit. And so if I simply select that ball nose bit, I'm going to cut down to 1/2 of an inch, and it will start in the center and work out, and I'll go ahead and calculate it. And so at this point, I can preview Toolpath, and so then you can see how that function is going to work. And so the next thing we would do is to go ahead and save that toolpath. So you can see that that is a pretty easy and straightforward way to use the pocket path and to use the fluting toolpath. You would need to, or you will need to, when you cut this on the Shark, you will need to cut this in 2 different operations. The first operation that I do is the fluting, and you'll see that in a moment, and then the pocket is the second operation. Okay, so I hope that helps. Just one more thought on the pocket cutting tool. And so this is a cutting board that I have laid out, and you can put like a cheese ball or cheese in the center of it, and then maybe some nuts on the sides, or some type of bowl possibly, which could be then, you know, maybe used for like broccoli and carrots and things like that, with some sort of a dip in the center. And so those things are kind of fun at a party. And so basically I've worked out the vectors, and so I will go ahead and just select these vectors, and I'll pick up my pocket tool path again, and I'm going to go ahead and use this ball nose bit again that's a 1/2 inch in diameter. I'll go ahead and cut just to 1/2 of an inch deep, and I'll calculate that tool path. And so that's actually the tool path that I'm going to use, and I'll go ahead and preview this. And so it'll take a little while for the CNC to carve that, but you can imagine how that would be very appealing at a party. and or even at home, and just to serve the different foods that are available. And I hope that's another idea you can use.